You were never meant to be anything more than a placeholder, Riley. A name we added to the invitation out of pity, not pride. That was what Sloane said to me. Right in the middle of the elegant outdoor party, while everyone raised their glasses to celebrate her for a gift I was actually behind. Words that shouldn't have been spoken, not in a place full of lights, music, and smiling faces, but they rang out clearly, as if they had always been there, just waiting to be said. Has anyone here ever been cut out of the family picture, even though you were the one who painted it? If so, then this story is for you. The scent of eucalyptus and bergamot floated through the air as I stepped into the restaurant, trying not to look too long at the flickering candles and the long, polished mahogany table lined with name cards. Spring garlands curled around the overhead light fixtures. Everyone looked like they had just walked out of a luxury catalog. Hair shiny, teeth whiter, confidence effortless. Not mine. Name? The young hostess asked, flipping through a sleek iPad. She wore a name tag that read Maribel, though she looked barely old enough to vote. Riley Harper. Margaret's daughter, I added, in case there was confusion. A pause. Her brow creased. I already knew. Oh, she motioned to a waiter nearby. Could you? The waiter, an older man with silvering temples, offered a gentle, almost apologetic smile. I believe we have your seat just this way, miss. We moved past the elegantly arranged place cards. Aunt Beth, Uncle Ray, Sloane Harper, founder, SLO.LA Ventures. And then, a folding chair, next to the swinging door of the women's restroom. A paper napkin folded in half with Riley H., written in loopy ballpoint pen. I stared at it, trying not to laugh or cry. This can't be right, I whispered, not to him, to the universe. I'm sorry, he said kindly. We were told this arrangement was final. Of course it was. I took the seat like a good girl, just like I'd always done. Mom's voice echoed from my memory. A phone call from years back. Just show up, be kind. Don't take the spotlight away from your sister. Like always. Silverware clinked, champagne fizzed. The family buzzed in animated conversation. Nobody noticed my arrival. Correction. They noticed, they just didn't care. Riley, Aunt Beth said finally, glancing over. You're still working. At that nonprofit, yes? She didn't wait for a reply before turning to her husband. Did I tell you Sloane got featured in Forbes Women? Number 4 on the to watch list. Oh, that's wonderful, I said to no one. My voice got lost under the rustle of menus and murmured wine pairings. Sloane looked radiant, naturally. Her new startup had something to do with fashion AI and circular economy. I wasn't entirely sure. I'd been blocked from her social media since 2022. I saw your dress on sale at Target, she said across the table, her voice syrupy but sharp. Retro's back, huh? A few stifled chuckles rippled through the table. I clenched my jaw, reaching for the water glass. Oh, Sloane leaned in, dramatic. Sorry, I shouldn't tease. Budgeting season, right, sis? Laughter now, full-bodied. A toast even, to Sloane's quick wit. And I? I was still next to the restroom, where every 5 minutes someone brushed past my chair muttering, "Excuse me." I looked down at my paper napkin, now damp and curling from condensation. Something inside me shifted. Broke, maybe? Or clicked into place, I couldn't tell which. My hand trembled slightly as I set down my water glass. The silver rim clinked against the table. I took a breath. A deep one. I've had enough, I said, rising. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Mom said automatically, as if it were rehearsed. I didn't answer. I walked. Outside, the Portland wind caught my hair as I stepped onto the sidewalk. March had not yet shaken off the winter chill, but I welcomed the cold. And then, just before I reached the corner, I stopped. Next time, I won't be on the guest list. I'll be hosting. The land wasn't just acreage, it was legacy. And my name was missing from it, too. The backyard was an Instagram dream. Cream-colored parasols tilted over lounge chairs. String lights floated above artisan cheese boards. The mimosa bar sparkled in the mid-afternoon sun, a little shrine to curated joy. Everything smelled like lemongrass and money. I stood under the lemon tree near the corner fence, a flute of something citrusy and oversweet in my hand, watching my sister work the crowd like a PR goddess. Sloane Harper, entrepreneur, founder, and now apparently philanthropist. She tapped a spoon against her glass. "Mom?" she called, voice lilting with performative affection. "This one's for you." The crowd shifted to face her. Margaret Harper, my mother, stepped forward, cheeks glowing with rosé and pride. Daniel, Sloane's husband, joined her with a dramatic flourish and held up a cream-colored envelope sealed with gold wax. An aesthetic choice, no doubt. Sloane pulled out the document with a flourish. "As a thank you for always being our compass," she said, locking eyes with Mom. "Daniel and I have a little surprise." Murmurs swept through the mimosa-sipping guests. "It's yours," she said, holding up the deed like a pageant queen. "The Woodland, 37 acres in southern Oregon. Your retreat, officially." The applause was immediate, rapturous. Someone popped champagne. Margaret pressed a trembling hand to her chest, the other to her heart. "You remembered?" she whispered. "My dream." I remembered it too, because she'd told me first, 1 year ago. In the middle of a cold phone call after she'd asked me to run background checks on the parcel. Handle the banking. Do it quietly. I watched from my corner as cameras flashed. The deed's header was visible. Parcel 74C, Douglas County. The same parcel I'd wired money for. The check was mine. The research mine. The acquisition had gone through Sloane for family cohesion, Margaret had said. She'd insisted I stay quiet. It was just paperwork. On the table beside them sat a gift tag, handwritten in Sloane's feminine cursive, from Sloane and Daniel. The first guest to approach me was a woman in a salmon-colored wrap dress and oversized sunglasses. "You're the dreamy one, right?" she said with a grin. "The little sister?" "I remember you from the ski photos." "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. Then came an older gentleman with silver hair and a heavy cologne trail. "Still doing, what is it again? Nonprofit marketing? Or are you finally doing something real?" I don't remember what I replied. Something neutral. Something forgettable. I held my position by the lemon tree for the next 20 minutes, nodding at comments about how Sloane has always been the visionary, how Daniel really grounds her, how the Harpers have such a giving spirit. No one mentioned me in any tense, past, present, or future. And then I saw it. Margaret clutching the deed to her chest, eyes glistening, surrounded by admirers. Sloane leaning in for a selfie, head tilted, caption already composing itself in her mind. Family legacy. Gratitude. Rooted. I felt the burn rising, not just in my throat, but under my skin. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't correct them. I didn't make a scene. I smiled. When someone turned with a camera, I leaned in and smiled tighter. My silence was no longer surrender. I left before dessert. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and chose not to say. The train ride back to my apartment was quiet. Rain tapped the window, soft and persistent. My coat was still damp when I hung it up by the door. I walked straight to my filing cabinet, second drawer. Pulled out the red folder with the white label. Woodland Transfer, March 2024. I sat on the floor, the hum of the heater barely audible behind my own pulse. Slowly, I opened the folder. There it was, my signature. The original wire receipt, the emails, the closing statement. Not Sloane's name, not Daniel's, mine. They'd stolen my gift, my gesture, my generosity. Again. This time I had the paper trail. It wasn't a headline. Not yet. But someone had seen me. Not the version they invented, but the one I kept hidden. The art gallery was all clean lines and brushed concrete, a hollow cathedral of curated rebellion. Spotlights angled from the ceiling like interrogators. Canvas after canvas lined the walls, washed out grays, calculated brushstrokes. Some pieces screamed meaning, others whispered money. I didn't have an invitation, but I'd memorized the guest list from Sloane's LinkedIn updates and RSVP screenshots that floated through the family group chat, the one I was still inexplicably part of. I stuck to the edges. My black blazer wasn't quite the right shade. My boots were scuffed. I sipped cucumber water like it was wine, letting it chill my mouth while I scanned the room for faces I didn't recognize. At the center, as always, was Sloane. She stood near a sculpture that looked like a stainless steel rib cage, one hand on her hip. Her voice melodic and clear as she spoke about innovation, sustainability, and redefining what legacy means in a fractured world. People nodded, laughed, took mental notes. I turned away. I'd barely made it past the hallway of mixed media installations when a voice stopped me. "You're Riley Harper, aren't you?" I froze. An older man, lean, stooped slightly with a wine-colored pocket square and heavy eyebrows, stepped forward. His name tag read Eugene Whitman. "I was reviewing the Ashcroft parcel filings," he said, squinting slightly as if seeing through layers of me. "You're on all the equity documents. Transfer rights, escrow memos, even the pilot permits." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He offered a knowing smile. "I've been watching that development for months. Sharp move, buying before the zoning changes. You filed under a revocable trust, but your signature's on every page." My throat went dry. Behind him, a girl barely out of college in a leather jacket and combat boots typed something into her phone, eyes flicking between me and Whitman. Her camera hung low on her hip. I don't talk about that publicly," I said carefully. He leaned in. "You should—" And right then, of course, Sloane appeared. "Oh, Eugene. You found my sister." Her arm looped through mine like we were inseparable. "She's a bit of a free spirit," Sloane said smoothly. "Always helping from behind the scenes. That's just who she is." I didn't flinch, because 2 hours earlier, in my tiny apartment with a flickering kitchen light and a chipped countertop, I'd posted 3 quiet Instagram stories to my business account, the one no one in my family followed. Slide 1, a close-up scan of the woodland deed. Slide 2, a bullet point project timeline labeled Ashcroft Renewal. Slide 3, a time-stamped photo from 2 weeks ago, my hands shaping the first batch of prototype pastries, ink smudged on the counter from architectural sketches nearby. I wasn't waiting to be invited anymore. I was just showing up. Proof first, explanation second. Later that night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, the screen glow painting my face. Whitman had messaged. Just one line. "We should talk. Let's meet." I stared at it for a second. Then another ping. Subject: meeting request, Ashcroft Holdings clarification. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. But I leaned back, closed my eyes, and breathed. My mother's voice taught me how to stay small. My files taught me how to fight back. The apartment didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a war room. Sticky notes covered the wall above my couch. Yellow, blue, and neon pink arranged like battle flags. Names, dates, wire numbers, metadata printouts. My coffee table buckled under the weight of manila folders and ink-stained spreadsheets. A half-eaten slice of banana bread sat forgotten next to a legal pad where I'd written one word in thick marker. Erased. I still hadn't opened Whitman's message. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to be ready. No more half-truths, no more soft retreats. If I was going to make a move, it had to be airtight. Ashcroft was only the beginning. I pulled out another file. Harper Relief Fund. A grant-based initiative that had been featured in Portland Monthly last fall under the headline, "Sloane Harper, Champion of Community." I had the original proposal, the one written on my old laptop 2 years ago, back when I was freelancing and feeding myself on oatmeal and coupons. Then came West Bay Renewal. Sloane was listed as the project's strategic liaison. But I had the zoning letters, the neighborhood petitions, and the seed capital records from my own checking account, all filed under my LLC, all uncredited. My fingers moved faster as the hours passed. I opened tabs, pulled cloud backups, cross-referenced bank statements. A timeline began to form, jagged and undeniable. My initials were everywhere, at the start of every venture. And Sloane's name? It appeared only when the media showed up. Then I saw it. 2 PDFs from our shared Google Drive, buried under folders labeled Archive, Do Not Touch. Harper Family Trust, Withdrawal Form, May 2023. Harper Family Trust, Withdrawal Form, January 2024. I opened both. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be Margaret Harper's, but it slanted wrong. The loop on the G in Margaret was limp. Unlike Mom's sharp, decisive penmanship, the ink bled slightly, like it had been traced. Sloppy, careless. My stomach churned. I pulled up a folder of birthday cards, thank you notes, all handwritten by Mom over the years, compared them side by side. The forged signatures danced like ghosts in the margins. I dug deeper, opening text threads between me and Sloane. Screenshots from last year when she'd said, "Trust me, I'll put your name in later." A promise. A lie. I found old voicemails from Mom. "Don't cause drama, Riley. This family doesn't need more division." Another lie. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd used me. I laid out the evidence across my living room floor. Contracts, financial statements, notarized forms, and screenshots. A forensic mural of theft by omission. I named the folder Clarification or Disclosure. It wasn't just a clever title. It was an ultimatum. Before I could talk myself out of it, I attached the file to a fresh email. To sloane.harper@foundershouse.org. Subject Friday. Message, you have until Friday. No greeting, no signature. I hit send. The wind outside howled as I stared at the sent confirmation. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the shift. I was done playing silent. Hours passed. No reply. I kept refreshing. Midnight blinked onto the clock. Then, not an email. A ping on my phone. Instagram. A post from @SloaneHarperOfficial. A photo taken from the set of her TV interview. Her hand gently resting on a polished tray of pastries. My pastries. The caption read, "Legacy is family." I didn't blink. I just whispered, "You've made your move." I didn't want credit. I wanted correction. The 14th floor of the Ashcroft Renewal Committee building was all light and reflection. Glass windows that caught the river's shimmer. An oak table so long it could have seated a jury. Around it sat half a dozen faces, some familiar, some pretending not to be. Legal pads open, pens poised, a silent camera from City PR blinking red in the back corner. Sloane entered first, smile calibrated, heels echoing with precision. Margaret followed, wrapped in silk and silence. Whitman had already taken his seat. No pocket square today, just a quiet, watchful expression. I walked in last. No fanfare. Just a gray folder under my arm, thick with ink and memory. Sloane began, her voice velvet over stone. "Thank you all for gathering. The Ashcroft Project is about restoring not just land, but legacy. It's a family vision, a shared purpose." Someone nodded. The blogger tapped something into her phone. I cleared my throat. No one looked. So I stood, slid the folder onto the table, and opened it. "Before we go any further, I'd like to submit a correction to the record." Sloane's smile didn't falter. Not yet. "Riley, we can talk privately." "No." I met her eyes. "You said not to make this a thing." Well, now it's a thing. A documented, publicly minuted thing. The PR rep raised an eyebrow. Whitman leaned forward. I flipped through the pages. "Here's the original deed to the Ashcroft parcel, purchased under Harper LLC, filed by me. Not Sloane. Here are the equity documents. And here," I held up 2 printouts, "are withdrawal forms from our family trust. both with a signature that does not match our mother's verified writing. Margaret flinched. This isn't the time. I turned, calm as ice. Then when is it, Mom? When I'm edited out of another headline? When my work becomes a footnote to someone else's fairy tale? Silence. The city housing staffer reached for the documents, brows furrowed. He scanned a few pages, then passed them to the board member beside him. Whitman cleared his throat. We reviewed the zoning applications last month. Riley's name appears on all key permits. Sloane's doesn't. Sloane's fingers curled around her pen. I was involved, just not officially. Riley and I have always worked together. No, I said, voice steady. You've always spoken over me. I placed a final page on the table, my grant proposal from the Harper Relief Fund, next to the one published by Sloane, word for word. Only the letterhead changed. I'm not angry you wrote your version of the story, I said, looking from face to face. I'm here to make sure mine isn't erased. No shouting, no tears, just the truth, printed in 12-point Times New Roman. A long silence. Then, near the end of the table, a board member leaned toward another. She's right, he whispered, barely audible. This changes everything. They wouldn't give me a seat. So I built the table and opened the doors. The string lights blinked softly above Alder Street courtyard, casting honeyed pools of light across folding tables and picnic benches. Dishes from every apartment lined the buffet. Rice casserole from Unit 1C, Kira's famous lentil soup, 3 kinds of pies, and a tray of pastries that looked suspiciously like the prototype batch I'd once photographed in my old kitchen. I never said a word. Just smiled when someone complimented the flaky crust. No speeches tonight. No spotlights. Just neighbors holding paper plates and laughing too loudly. The air smelled like cardamom and roasted vegetables. A violinist from 4A played something that sounded like a lullaby. I moved through the space with a cider pitcher in hand, refilling cups, nodding to people I hadn't known 6 months ago. Whitman leaned on the railing near the garden, arms crossed, eyes soft. He raised a glass as I passed. Nothing said. Everything understood. Miss Riley. A small voice called. I turned. A girl with tight curls and chocolate on her chin tugged my sleeve. Is this your building? I knelt, brushing a crumb from her cheek. No, sweetheart, I said. It's ours. I just held the door. She blinked, smiled wide, and ran off yelling about seconds on banana bread. Kira hugged me from behind, one arm sticky from serving lemonade. You didn't just save a project, she whispered. You saved people. I exhaled slowly. This was the point. Not headlines or handshakes. Just a place where people could stay, grow, and believe they mattered. No name scratched on a napkin. No folding chair in the hallway. Later that night, when the music faded and kids were carried home half asleep, I returned to my apartment. The door clicked shut behind me, the silence a warm blanket. I sat at the same desk where I'd once mapped out trust withdrawals and traced forged signatures, but tonight's work was different. I signed my name, clean, bold, permanent, to the final documents of the Harper Community Catalyst Fund. A grant structure for women-led urban renewal. This time, the title page bore my initials. No edits, no shadows. As I slid the folder into the drawer, a knock came at the door. No text. No heads up. I opened it to find a plain envelope. Hand-delivered. No return address. Inside was something soft, familiar. I unfolded it carefully. A canvas bakery tote. The one my mom used during holiday seasons when I was a child. I hadn't seen it in over a decade. It was clean, pressed, unscented. No note. No signature. I held it for a long time. Resolution doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes with a quiet offering, and the knowledge that you no longer need permission to exist. She never planned to be a symbol. All Riley wanted was fairness. A name that wasn't erased. A chair that wasn't next to the restroom. a legacy she didn't have to claw back from those who shared her blood. But when silence became complicity and omission turned into theft, she realized surviving wasn't enough. She had to reclaim the story, line by line, ledger by ledger. Her journey was not loud. There were no shouting matches, no viral videos of rage. Instead, there were receipts, contracts, timelines. Her mother's trembled signature, forged without hesitation. Her own name, missing from projects she built. And every insult, every slight, brushed off as just a misunderstanding, became a dot on the map that led her to the truth. They hadn't simply forgotten her. They had built an empire on her absence. But in the end, Riley didn't burn the house down. She rewired it. She stood before the very boardrooms where she had once been dismissed, and she laid down facts like a courtroom closing argument. No vengeance, no screaming, just clarity. It wasn't about taking what was Sloane's. It was about finally reclaiming what had always been hers. Not for applause, for accuracy, for dignity. And when the silence broke, when the first voice in that room finally said, "She's right, this changes everything," it wasn't just a personal victory. It was a shift in power. A reminder that the truth, though delayed, is undefeated when delivered with patience and proof. The story didn't end with an apology. It didn't need to. Riley found something better than reconciliation. She found reinvention. In the courtyard of the housing project she saved, surrounded by laughter and community, she passed around pastries, not power. She didn't raise a toast to herself. She let her actions speak louder, to a little girl who asked if the building was hers, and to whom she simply replied, "No, sweetheart, it's ours." Because sometimes justice isn't loud or swift. Sometimes it's patient, strategic, and profoundly human. Like the final toll of a long-forgotten bell, justice may arrive late. But when it does, its echo lasts longer than the lie. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt overlooked, erased, or forced to smile through someone else's spotlight, you're not alone. There are so many more stories like Riley's waiting to be told. Stories of quiet strength, reclaimed power, and truth spoken not with rage, but with receipts. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Because somewhere out there, another voice is about to rise. And here, we're listening. You weren't pushed out of this family, Ivy. You walked out. Because deep down, you knew you were never worth staying. That's what she said to me. Evelyn, my mother. While the garden raised their glasses and I stood in the shadows, the imprint of my father's grip still fresh on my arm. Have you ever been treated like the outsider in your own home? Erased with silence, then blamed for the noise when you finally spoke up? Then this isn't just my story. It's for anyone who's ever been forced to choose between peace and their own identity. Stay, because silence isn't a safe place anymore. It's where the truth begins to speak. The string quartet played something generic and upbeat, and a man I didn't recognize leaned his blazer on the back of my chair without asking. I shifted slightly, reminding myself to unclench my jaw before it cracked. On the far end of the manicured lawn, my mother stood beneath the rose arch, wine glass raised, the spotlight of the setting sun catching the shimmer of her peach silk dress. Evelyn Waverly, hostess, matriarch, and master of narrative, was mid-toast. "To Brielle, the heartbeat of this family," she declared, voice syrupy and practiced. To those who shaped her. Douglas, of course, her late grandfather, whom she takes after, and our dear Aunt Claudine, whose generosity made all of this possible. Polite applause, a ripple of murmured agreement. My name was never in danger of making the list. 6 years. That's how long it had been since I left. No dramatic exit, no final words, just silence. I hadn't planned to return, ever. But when Brielle's engagement invitation arrived, thick cardstock, gold foil edges, her handwriting on the envelope, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not sentimentality, not hope, just the familiar pull of unfinished business. So here I was, wearing navy to avoid black. No plus one, and no illusions. Brielle spotted me across the garden and gave a hesitant wave, then mouthed, "Sorry." Her dress was a soft blush, classic cut, beautiful. She looked like someone else's sister, like someone who hadn't watched me pack my car at midnight all those years ago without saying a word. A waiter slid past me, leaving behind a glass of sparkling something. I nodded in thanks, then took a small sip. Bitter. "You're Ivy, right?" A woman to my left turned slightly. I recognized the surname on her place card. Whitaker. No relation. Probably a coworker of my father's or one of Brielle's PR firm connections. "Yes." She smiled, too brightly. "I heard about the family trust thing. That must have been—" I looked at her directly. She blinked. "I just love your sister," she added quickly. "Such grace. So humble." The laugh I didn't let out lodged in my throat. The night unraveled in long, choreographed scenes. People I hadn't seen in a decade hugged me like we'd had coffee last week. They complimented my dress, asked where I'd been hiding, and always mentioned how proud Evelyn and Douglas must be of Brielle. At some point, I ended up near the stone fountain, just far enough from the crowd to breathe. A teenage server walked by and offered me a tray of canapes. I declined. "You look like you could use something stronger than cheese puffs."